I will call this meeting to order, and noting just for the record that while we have on our agendas the meeting begins at 2, it was noticed to begin at 1:30, so we have full license to proceed with the meeting. I'd like to thank all of you for coming today, and I'd like to acknowledge and welcome two very special guests that we have. Mr. Ken Wright, a true friend and benefactor to VCU, and the president will speak about him a little bit later, and Gail Johnson, who is the president of the MCV Foundation. We're delighted to have both of you with us today. I'd like to also acknowledge and thank our good friend Karen Capsidelis. Karen, you are, I know I saw you come in. There you are. Okay, I know you're here from the Richmond Times-Dispatch. And thanks to all of you who are joining us over the web. Before moving any further in the agenda, I would also like to welcome to our midst our newest board member, Tyrone Nelson. Again, Dr. Rao will have more details to share about your joining us, but we're delighted to have you with us. And I would note for our colleagues that Tyrone has jumped in with both feet and has also already gotten very, very involved, joining Jackie, me, and several others for the meeting that Mike held with students and faculty a few weeks back on diversity. So, welcome aboard.
Thank you, sir.
It has been, as everyone is well aware, a very busy fall following up on matters that we covered in our last meeting, and certainly things that have developed on the campus since, and our president will report on those. I would just note that a lot of that work has flowed through the various committees or special committees that we have, and I'd like to thank all of you on the board as well as the staff that has supported us. Clearly, the work of this board could not be done as effectively as it is without the dedication that each of you bring to our committees. On that, one of the things that I've been asked to note is that, as I think all of you are aware, we do have members of this board representing us on the various foundations and other affiliated boards. But as I was reminded this morning that we need a candidate from this board who would be willing to serve on the VCU Alumni Board. And noting that we do have good alumni in the mix, hope that we can prevail upon one of you to step forward, and Lori will be the designated point of contact, and assure you that with all these things, there's minimal time required, right? That's always the always the answer. But again, thanks in advance. Those are the only things I wanted to raise up front. I'll now turn it over to President Rao to give his report. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Rector, members of the board. Good afternoon. I'd like to spend a little time facing you. And so to start out with, as the Rector promised, I am pleased to welcome, on behalf of the university, to our Board of Visitors, a great new member. Oh, I have to use the microphone?
Would you like me?
You can, if you like me to, I can. Okay. Welcome, Tyrone Nelson. Tyrone serves as pastor of the 6th Mount Zion Baptist Church here in Richmond. He's also, very impressively, vice chairman of the Henrico County Board of Supervisors. And I know from a lot of my contacts with whom I speak that he is a very effective member of the Henrico County Board and very engaged and making a very important difference in Henrico County. And I have a long list of other things that he is engaged in: the Baptist General Convention of Virginia, the Capital Region Airport Commission, and the Richmond Metropolitan Transportation Authority. But I got to know Tyrone because we recruited him to the VCU Health System Board. And in a short time on that board, he was very engaged, very effective, and quickly became a friend of his alma mater. He is also a graduate of Virginia Commonwealth University with a bachelor's degree in business administration. And this is a gentleman who cares about people and shares our love and passion for and commitment for our mission. which engages a large number of people in so many ways. So if you will join me along with Rector John Luke in welcoming Tyrone Nelson to the Board of Visitors. Tyrone, you begin with an interesting time. Tomorrow we will bring everyone together in our forum we call Commencement, in which we will graduate 2,500 students who are eligible for commencement, and they may not all be there, but indeed 2,500 students will bring their programs to a close, and we look forward to seeing any of you who are able to be with us tomorrow. I think it's going to be a wonderful time together. I have a very special announcement that I'd like to make. I can't say I'm able to do this at very many board meetings, but this is a really big one, and it's a really important one. This is, of course, the season in which we start to think about giving, and no one will be able to top this, I don't think, but I would welcome the opportunity to hear from any of you who might like to. One of the most generous, one of the wisest people I know is Mr. Ken Wright. Ken Wright has a commitment to Virginia Commonwealth University and all of its parts like no one else I know. He is an enabler. He is someone who has this just incredible human ability to think about other people and to help advance them in their lives. He spots people when he knows that they need support, and he has become, along with his former wife, who unfortunately we lost just a few years ago, Diane. Together, they have become incredible pillars in the Richmond community and at Virginia Commonwealth University. So Ken has decided in his great wisdom to make today an historical day at Virginia Commonwealth University, because Ken, the Board of Visitors today will have the opportunity to consider approval of your transformational gift from your foundation, a $16 million gift to name the C. Kenneth and Diane Wright Center for Clinical and Translational Research at Virginia Commonwealth University. So, Ken, I need to tell you that this is the 5th largest gift in the history of VCU. You are among the top 5 largest givers to Virginia Commonwealth University. The Center for Clinical and Translational Research, as I think about it in my 7 years here, it's probably one of the most significant entities that has ever been created at Virginia Commonwealth University toward our strategic direction, toward our vision and our passion, which is, of course, the success of our people. It's important because this is a research university, and this is an institution in which, at every level, whether someone is a freshman, or a student who's earning an MD degree, or a student who's getting a PhD degree, committing themselves to research for life, or both maybe, or all three. In many cases, it is all three. The Center for Clinical and Translational Research gives them an opportunity to be engaged in what they will do for the rest of their lives in the context of learning and discovery and improving the human experience like no other. So Ken, this will bear your name and Diane's name, and I am so proud of that. It is a privilege and an honor for us to have your good name on this center, what is probably in this century going to be known as one of the most important centers at Virginia Commonwealth University. It relates to every aspect of our mission and our vision. So Ken, I can't thank you enough. This visionary gift will do more than just name the center. It will also establish six Kenneth and Diane Wright Distinguished Chairs in Clinical and Translational Research, as well as the Physician Scientist Scholar Program, which will help students who are interested in the MD, PhD program, a really important part of this institution's commitment and landscape. This is an important gift that really comes on top of a lifetime of commitment that you and Diane have given this institution. It is going to grow on top of your huge commitments that you've already made to Massey, to Pauley, to engineering, to our undergraduate scholars. You've done so much at this institution, Ken, and I only thought it was right to share this moment with you, together with the highest level of this institution, the governors of this institution, the Board of Visitors. So, if you will indeed come together with me, and let's all rise in celebration and honoring Ken Wright for his great wisdom. Ken, thank you. This may give you some idea of how the board's likely to vote today. And I again thank you, Ken. And we look forward to your continued engagement and inspiration at this institution. So, a little bit of business, if you will, following some celebration. I'd like to talk with you a little bit about where we kind of left off at our last September board meeting. At our last meeting, I outlined for you some shifts and changes in our strategic direction. Nothing significant, of course. We continue with the same mission, the same vision, the same overall passion and commitment to the people who are the beneficiaries of this important mission that helps in so many ways shape society. I talked with you a little bit about some specific commitments. You might remember emphasized the core of activities that we are going to continue to move ourselves toward. You remember that Barbara Holland was here, and she gave you what I thought was a very timely outline of where we're headed and where the world is headed and how that impacts our thinking about where we take this institution. And fundamentally what we're doing is we're continuing to reposition ourselves and our strategy toward integrating our elements of commitment and our mission. So whether it's learning, or whether it's research, or whether it is our service or our clinical mission, which is very important to so many thousands of people whose lives we save, whose lives we touch, that's one type of integration, meaning that we really need to be doing all of these things together. We also have continued to integrate with respect to being certain that all of our work touches our community and our communities throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. After all, it is important that we see the value and benefit of our work to the benefit of our people. We talked about a city center initiative. This is a city center that I shared with you will really concentrate on some of the city's most important challenges and needs. K-12, of course, education here in the city of Richmond, where we are very pleased and proud to be a strong partner, and we will continue to strengthen that partnership through the many thousands of us who are engaged in the city, and of course, human health. Human health is a core mission of ours, and we said that it would be, of course, in the context of our strategic plan, and now we've called these two things out as our real areas of focus. And I want to tell you that our center, that we don't really have a name for yet, we're probably offering some kind of prize to help create a name for it. But really, what's more importantly conceptually is that this center is one that will connect all of our work and all aspects of our mission to the city, and the work is well underway. We're working through philanthropic organizations to try and fund it, and we are, of course, structurally developing it and making great headway along those lines. You heard me talk about our undergraduate students and the importance of our work with respect to advising and our need to really pay attention to that. You heard me speak specifically along with Gail, talk about the third to the fourth year and our discovery that that's an area where we really need to focus, and we are indeed doing that. You heard me talk about my continued concern about debt, student debt, and that we must find a way to lower student debt so that this continues to be what so many envisioned higher education to be nearly 50, 60 years ago when we talked about creating levels of access that included financial access. It's an area of considerable concern. I talked about faculty. I talked about our need to really focus on the diversity of our faculty. I talked about the need to focus on the compensation of our faculty so that we have the ability to be competitive. I also talked fundamentally about academic programs and our need to really be thoughtful about how things are changing. Students are changing. Their needs are changing. Society's changing. Economic landscapes are changing. And do we really have the kinds of academic programs that we need to have? And can we indeed change more rapidly than so many of our large systems of higher education throughout the country that have been the envy of the world? I claim that VCU can change much more rapidly than most organizations, and my colleagues, I know, are committed to working with me to prove that that is indeed the case. So with all these things that I'm talking about, fundamentally I'm talking about the need to really shift resources, the need to really think about where our resources are invested. We are not budgetless. We have a very large budget at this institution, and it is important that we be good stewards of these dollars to ensure that these resources are aimed toward our stated priorities. We state them very well. We need to be certain that our dollars can follow them. It is very important that our priorities have the kind of support that we say we are committed to. And so as such, we will be continuing to make progress. We've made great progress since your last meeting in the development of a conceptual budget model. In fact, in March, Gail and I will be talking with you about that model in a conceptual framework, and we will be able to give you more detail on that. We will also talk a little bit more with you about the other most critical resource that we have at this institution, our human resource, that is our people, and VCU deserves to have its own human resources structure, and we'll be talking more about where we are headed with that as well at your next meeting. In the implementation of our, what I think probably we can say will be in the next few years, the largest capital and facilities master plan, this institution, we are accelerating much of that work, and we are doing that again with having the right people in the right places. So I guess what I'm really saying is that everything that I'm talking about really is around the success of our people. At the heart of our mission are our students in particular. And of course, we could not do for our students what we do without faculty and staff. And we need to provide the support that we can to ensure their success so that they can pass that success on to our students. And this leads me sort of to the end of my report, which is an important place. We have benefited as an institution tremendously from discussions that have taken place around the nation about people, about students in particular, about a generation and generations of people who have enlightened us and reminded us of how rapidly things are changing, how rapidly they are changing. We are becoming a country of more diverse people, and that becomes an incredible opportunity for the strength of our country, and it certainly, we have decided, is an incredibly important part of the strength of our institution. And so just think about it. Very logically, it's really important for us to recognize that every human being wants to be included. That is a very natural feeling. And we have to enable that. We have to ensure that our large, complex organizations make that possible. And that's a commitment we've made at Virginia Commonwealth University. So in light of so much of the conversation that has taken place nationally and here at Virginia Commonwealth University, from which we have benefited, I wanted to just give you a brief update. Again, because I continue to update you on where we are headed and what we are doing. I have gotten the most wonderful reception from our senior leadership team and our faculty. I'm so proud of our faculty, our staff, and our senior leadership team for putting so much effort and energy into conversations that may be among the very most important that we have at this institution. And just alone in that, we have made significant progress, but we are going to make much more because we are not where we need to be, and I'm not going to stand here and pretend that racism is not an issue at Virginia Commonwealth University, or that we cannot do better at this institution. It is, and we can, and we will. And so, we are going to continue to be a strong leader. We are going to dedicate resources to advancing inclusion. We are going to continue to make education and training not only available, but an important part of your commitment when you are part of our team at VCU. We are going to look at all of our policies, not only the policies that exist, but we're going to look at the implementation of new policies that do not address needs that we have to ensure that we have an inclusive environment, which will benefit everyone. We're going to look at every part of this organization. We're going to look at how we hire, how we retain, promote, how do we mentor people. We're going to look at our curriculum, fundamentally. When I talk about those high-demand programs, what are we really talking about? We're talking about the programs that will attract the attention of diverse people from throughout the world. We can talk all we want about all the goals that we might set, but if we don't have the programs that entice our students from around the world to help make this a more diverse learning environment, they will not come. We're going to talk about how we conduct business. We're going to talk about from anything from procurement to any other aspect of our business. And we are most certainly going to talk about communication, something we all need to work on. We all need to hold each other accountable for. I know I need to do a much better job of communicating. And I want to take a moment to say thank you to several of you, John Luke and Jackie Stone, Mike Frazier gave me a call and outlined some really, really specific ideas from his great experiences that he's had in the corporate world that have helped to advance diversity and inclusion. He showed me ways in which that was happening, how that actually did happen. Moved my heart with a couple of stories. Tyrone, thank you so much for being on the board all of, a couple of weeks, and here you were at our forum. And all of you have been very deeply interested. Bill Gifter, thank you for your time and support as well. Your great ideas that have helped me in thinking about my leadership as well. You're all wonderful mentors, incredible supporters. What you have done, what this environment has done, is it has actually catalyzed all of what we are talking about, which is inherently around embracing diversity and embracing our commitment to inclusion. So as we move forward, we will continue to show a commitment that is more than just words around what this institution stands for. And again, I thank the entire university community here before the Board of Visitors for this very strong commitment that you are helping us authenticate at this institution. So with that, Mr. Rector, I conclude my report, and I, of course, as I walk back to my seat, welcome the opportunity to respond to any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, President Rao. Are there questions? Well, I'm sure there will be as we move on through the various topics in the meeting. Thank you very much. We will now turn to our committees and reports of their activity in open session this morning. And Mr. Frazier, we'll begin with you.
Thank you, Mr. Rector. The Academic and Health Affairs Committee met this morning. The committee approved a consent agenda. There were 8 items on the agenda, including, of course, the approval of the minutes. 2 new programs were part of that. One is a Doctor of Policy Leadership in the Wilder School, and another is a Master of Decision Analytics in the School of Business. And other items, of course, were well received. We received a number of reports. It started with our committee dashboard reports, which we do at every meeting. We spent a fair amount of time talking about graduation rates and drilling into those, including looking at where we might also continue to have gaps in certain graduation rates, and how to, in follow-on meetings, talk about how we're working to have programs, processes to close those gaps. We talked about faculty turnover as metrics, research productivity, and other forms of collaboration. We will be revisiting the dashboard, and these are the critical metrics that help catalyze how we focus the activities of the committee and related functions in the March and May meetings as we take those inputs in, consider them, discuss them, and then provide a recommendation going forward. We had two topical reports, one from Ed McLaughlin in the athletics department. It's in good stead, well funded. We'll be having a follow-on report about academics and academics support within that, most likely at our next meeting. Dr. Marshall Rapley also talked about some perspectives from a student perspective in particular, about engagement, about collaboration, and that there will be some follow-on work to turn some of those observations into specific actions. And will be reporting back to us in the next 6 months, and then we can measure and look at how those programs and how those initiatives progress. We spent the most time taking a topic that this board has talked about at a number of meetings, board, finance committee, academic, of international students as well as out-of-state students, and saying, where do we stand versus other institutions? How can changing that mix promote both the diverse nature of the institution and also gain certain financial benefits to fund initiatives such as scholarships? It was insightful, it was eye-opening, and specifically if you look at the core degreed area, VCU is basically about 9% of our students are out international and out of state when you look at people going for degrees versus special programs such as English. We'll be following on about ways that we might increase that mix and not challenge the core mission of the institution and gain the attendant benefits. So we expect to see that as follow-ups in both our March, April, and August sessions that the board has. We have the faculty report that June Nicholson provided. A lot of that was focused on the representation and how to make continued progress in the area of diverse faculty and some of the actions taken by the Senate and the follow-on that have been going on for a period of months really since then, and how we'd like to revisit that. We heard from our staff representatives. Caitlin Berglund gave us a report. A lot of that was about the development programs that the staff is exposed to, not only what they've been doing, which is impressive and comprehensive, but what will be coming as we look forward at the rest of the year. And then Diamond Gathers provided the student representative report that included positive feedback on the diversity forum that many of us were engaged in and Dr. Rao had led, as well as discussions about student safety, including the Ramsway Safe Path that had been approved to create a corridor through the university that people feel very, very safe moving within. And you can, of course, in our age of technology, download that through an application, as well as a number of other topics. And that concluded the committee's work, and we're going to be focused again on topical discussions such as the one on student mix at our future meetings.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Worley, Audit, Integrity, and Compliance.
In open session, the Audit, Integrity, and Compliance Committee had 5 agenda items for information. The committee reviewed the current status of its dashboard measures, which remain largely unchanged from the last meeting. The Enterprise Risk Management Steering Committee met recently to review the status of 2 mitigation plans, which revealed the progress continues in mitigating these risks. A new Assistant Vice President for Safety and Risk Management, Mr. Tom Briggs, joined us on the 7th of December, and he was introduced into the meeting. The committee received an update on data governance, which included Phase 2 of the Data Information Management Council 2016 Work Plan and the status of initiatives with banner revitalization. We heard from the Integrity and Compliance Officer about recent program activities, including Compliance Week, required compliance education, as well as conflict of interest in reporting. And I might take this break here when we're talking about required compliance education. We also talked about financial disclosure statements that we're collecting and recruiting from the board. We have to have these in by the 15th of December, so that's just a couple of days from now. And so would all of you please, if you haven't already, complete those forms. They should have been sent to you. If not, we'll certainly be glad to send you another one. The last agenda item was an overview of the internal quality assessment of the internal audit function. The work was found to be in conformance of professional standards in the Internal Audit Code of Ethics. And that concludes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Githner, you are back.
I am.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rector. The Finance and Budget and Investment Committee met earlier this morning. We have 3 action items for the consent agenda. The first one is an amendment to the 6-year capital plan. I think we all know that the university is required to have a 6-year capital plan that it submits to the state. The most recent plan being for 2016 through 2022. The plan can be updated and amended, and generally is done every 2 years. The administration is requesting an amendment so that we can renovate the Axel Residence Hall to the plan. That residence hall is directly across from the Siegel Center. It was opened in 2001. It houses about 350 students, except for paint. No real work has been done on it, so you all can imagine in 14 years with a lot of students going through there, it probably needs a little tender loving care. There's also a need to totally replace the heating and air conditioning system. Total cost of the project is budgeted at $7.5 million. The next item is is related to it. Assuming that we get permission to move on with the Axel Residence Hall plan, the very first step is to hire an architect. The university uses about 15 different architectural firms, talked to a number of them, and would like to award this contract to KOP Architects. They've done a lot of work here at VCU, very familiar with the building. We did follow all the normal procurement rules and regulations that we do, so that's another thing that we'll be asking permission for in the consent agenda. The third thing in the consent agenda is the Simco, which of course is the new company that we've just recently started to do investments for VCU and its affiliates. And the board previously established the investment company. What we need to do now is have a resolution that authorizes the president or his designee to negotiate agreements related to the management and investment of the university funds subject to board approval. So it's just saying that the president and or his representative can begin to negotiate with USIMCO to begin to move some money on there. So those are the 3 things that have been that are on the consent agenda. Also, for information, we got an annual report which is required in our bylaws on debt management. Overall, the report reflects that the university's debt has been well managed and there's no material debt compliance issues that have been noted. We also got a treasurer's report about our investments. The operating pool returned a 1-year blended rate of -0.5 as compared to its benchmark of -0.6 for the year ending September 30th, 2015. The long-term tier showed a 0.9% return compared to a composite benchmark of 3.0 for the period ending September 30th, 2015. Treasury Services is working obviously to transition these investments to USIMCO. I think everybody's pretty much aware of what the returns have been over the last few months in the stock market, and our information, our returns are very similar to others. Revenue and expense summary through September 30th, 2015. The good news is the university's revenues through September 30th have increased 5.6% year to date over last year. University's tuition and fees revenues are exceeding annual growth estimates through the first quarter. Total revenues are on par with annual growth estimates. The university's expenditures through September 30th have increased 2.5%, which is lower than the annual growth estimate of 5.3%. However, the folks in finance cautioned us that some of the expenses will be made up later in the year. We also got a presentation on the health system's financial operations. The 3-month summaries were presented by the health system. The operating margin is slightly ahead of budget, but the total margin is $64 million less than budget, due, unfortunately, to that same old market decline in the first quarter of the fiscal year. I believe, based on what we heard yesterday, John, that we've made up about $30 million of that.
The mark-to-market differences, yeah.
Yeah, so that's coming along. The committee also received information on our dashboard, a capital project update, and a report on efficiency and effectiveness. And Mr. Rector, that concludes my report in open session.
Thank you very much. I'll now turn to our Vice Rector, Ms. Stone, for a report on governance and compensation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Governance and Compensation Committee initially reviewed updates to our committee dashboard to reflect additional work of the committee which we're undertaking, and that includes, for example, conducting the presidential evaluation and compensation process and reviewing policies as it relates to the strategic partnerships that VCU has entered into over the years. The committee then began the process of identifying and discussing possible topics for our orientation and retreat, which will take place in August of next year. So you'll all be receiving an email to solicit your input on topics and possible formats for us to consider. So we look forward to receiving your input in that regard. We also discussed the need to conduct a board assessment in 2016. And so you'll be hearing more about that as well. And we reviewed the board member experience analysis. And finally, we reviewed proposed changes to both the presidential evaluation and the strategic partnership policies and discussed updated timelines for both of these policies. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. And lastly, Mr. Wagner, University Resources.
Thank you very much. Happy to report on behalf of the committee. In open session, we started with a report on government relations from Matt Conrad and Kara Gunther. They reported on the strategic priorities of both the university and the health system at the local, state, and federal levels. They gave us a preview of the 2016 General Assembly session, including legislative and budgetary initiatives that would be of the greatest importance to the institution in the coming weeks. And then finally, they gave us an update on recent events held with both elected and appointed city officials, including a presentation to the City Council regarding the strategic vision of the health system. We concluded from that report that Matt and Kara would not have that much time off over Christmas, as there's plenty of work to do in those spaces. We appreciated it. The committee asked several questions about how we are engaging with the particularly local officials, and we also, as part of that process, learned that work is being done to talk about the economic impact, to study and then present the economic impact of VCU on the city of Richmond, which we all assume will be significant to make sure that our role in the city is understood. Then we moved to a presentation from Pam Lepley and her team on the communication side of the business. She obviously and her team have been spending a lot of time on the national and local events regarding diversity and inclusion. Mike talked about those, so I won't repeat, but certainly we saw from Pam that her team and she were heavily involved in the process of making sure that we effectively communicated both the VCU story and within VCU, and she assured us that she's working closely with the President's action team on providing appropriate information to support the diversity and inclusion actions across the university and the medical center. Then we also received from Pam's colleague the latest Make It Real campaign. I think this is campaign 4.0, which is focused on student recruitment. It's tracking very well above industry standards for engagement. For example, through click-on rates, it's comprehensive and integrated through digital ads, social media, TV spots, print ads, and a Richmond City Airport mural, which is live. I'll look for it tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. if I'm awake enough as I leave. They also highlighted their work on a spring campaign that's going to support and set the stage for the university's comprehensive fundraising campaign, which will leverage the Make It Real campaign. And we highlighted both through the presentations and questions about how Pam and her team are aligned to support other key initiatives in the university, including the capital campaign and the recruitment of out-of-state students. Pam also introduced Mike Porter as the new Associate Vice President for Public Affairs. Mike's been with us with the university for 10 years. Mike, are you here? Mike, congratulations. And then we closed out the open portion of the meeting with a report from Marty and her team in development and alumni relations. At this point, we've raised $37.7 million, which is 42% towards the goal. We rated that as green. Let me just say simply the backbone work that Marty's been doing to prepare us to be a more effective back office in our fundraising initiatives has been up to date and turned on. They call it the radar system. I think it's her way of telling us that she knows where we are as we begin the capital campaign. It's fair to say that a lot of work and planning, I think the board has heard, and we will hear some more in the closed session, is preparing for a campaign is a fairly, a lot of work and planning that needs to go into that, and we are meeting the benchmarks we need to prepare for the public rollout of that, including a number of new fundraising hires in places like School of Medicine, Massey Cancer Center, and the School of Medicine. I would ask my fellow committee members if they have anything to add to that. That concludes our report. Thank you.
Rick, thanks very much, and thanks for your leadership, and thanks to the other chairs for your leadership as well. Are there any questions at all? If not, then we've had reference to the consent agenda. If I could have a motion followed by a second to approve the action items listed 1 through 12 on the consent agenda.
So moved.
We have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. I would now ask if there is any new business in open session that anyone would like to surface at this point. If not, I will turn to Ms. Stone for a motion to go into closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Rector. I move that we convene into closed session to discuss certain confidential personnel matters or the performance of specific individuals, the acquisition or use of real property for public purpose, or of the disposition of publicly held real property, where discussion in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of VCU, to consult with legal counsel regarding legal matters, and or to discuss confidential matters relating to gifts, bequests, and fundraising activities, including the report of the Vice President, the development report, the consideration of the named funds report recommendations, the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds, and discussion of the terms or scope of such contract, where discussion in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of VCU, as authorized by Section 2.2-3711 A1, A3, A7, A8, A29 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act.
That's impressive. Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
We are now in closed session.